What up, nerds? I'm Bryson. You can call me Bammed, and this is. Sorry. This is CTF and Cigars by Bam CTF, where I talk about. Where I light up a cigar and I talk about CTFs, hacking, and other security related topics. Um, so today I am continuing my series where I'm going through the TryHackMe's Advent of Cyber. I'm going through days 13 through 16 today. So we're getting caught up. I'm going to do another stream tomorrow and then another on Christmas Eve. And by then I should be all caught up to the 24th. And then we'll see if I do something either on Christmas Day or the day after. I'll probably be busy Christmas Day. So the day after Christmas, I'll do that final challenge on the 25th. But before we get to that, let's have a look at our cigar of the day. So today, this is what I've got. It is finishing up my AJ Fernandez sampler pack that I had. This is the last one. I've already done the others that were in that. This is the last one. This is the Herencia Cubana Core. This is a Toro, so it's 6.5 inches long. It's a 52 gauge. So let's see. This is it's got a lot of different things in it. So the filler, it's an Esteli Ligero, Yamastran Ligero, Pennsylvania broadleaf, and a Nicaraguan Ometepe Ligero. So it's got several different types of Ligero. So Ligero, and I mentioned this before. So on the tobacco plant, you've got the different leaves, and basically the further up the plant you get, the more potent the leaves are, but they don't burn as well. So you usually want to, have a mix of different leaves from different parts of the plant, so you have a nice even burn, as well as getting different flavors and different strength out of it. So this one has quite a bit of Ligero in it. It's the binder, so that's the filler. Then it's all bound together with an Esteli Habano Viso. And then the wrapper is a Habano Ecuador Sun-Grown Ligero. So it's also got a Ligero wrapper. So this should be a pretty strong cigar, very full-bodied. The aroma, let's see. So we've got different notes. There's a little bit of cocoa, some coffee, cedar. So it's a nice smelling cigar. And actually, I haven't smoked one of these yet, I don't think. I still got the two. So the sampler came with two of each, and I just found both of these at the bottom of my humidor. So they must have kind of wound up on the bottom. So I haven't got one of these yet. So the first third, based on the reviews I've read, we're going to expect some leather, some dark chocolate, dry wood, and then sweet and tangy spices. And then the second third, we get some thick black pepper. The sweetness from the first third becomes a little more bitter. You get a bit of charred wood, some espresso, kind of edges or kind of mixes with that. And then the final third, the pepper becomes more strong. You get a bit of charred wood and some intense black espresso. So that is what we are about to light up here and what we're expecting. Let me find my cutter. I'm going to go ahead and use the V-cut. Really been enjoying the V-cut lately, so let me go ahead and cut that. So there's my cutter. All right, so we got that cut. So we've got a nice V here, and we will light it up. Got to toast the foot first. So we just kind of want to heat up the bottom. Purpose of that is just so we get a nice even burn. Just kind of move our lighter around here. Don't want to get too close. Don't want to just completely burn the foot, but we do want a nice even burn all the way through. So we toast that up. All right, with that thing. So yeah, I'm getting some of that leather and that chocolate. Bit more pepper on the retrohale. So the retrohale is when you exhale through your nose. That gives you a different flavors. When you go through your nose, it changes kind of the taste. You get a little bit better feel for how this thing tastes. So that's pretty good. So let's I'm going to smoke that, and we are going to jump into the advent of cyber, and we are on to day 13. All right, so day 13, we want to prove the sysadmins deserve coal for Christmas. All right, so this one doesn't give us a tutorial. The tutorial is mixed in with the questions, rather. So we jump right in. First thing, of course, is to the deploy machine. We've already done that. The Christmas GPS says that this house is at this IP address. We want to scan it with our port scanning tool. So that's the first thing we want to do. All right, so we'll use Nmap to scan that. All right, so we've scanned it. That one's done. What old deprecated protocol is being used? And we can see here we've got telnet. So now we just want to telnet into that server. And it looks like we have access. Just a quick bash tip. Notice what I did here. The previous command I had run was Nmap and then the IP. I wanted to run the same command, but with telnet. So if you use these carets, what it'll do is it'll find and replace your last command and replace it. So it replaced Nmap with telnet. So the command was telnet and then the IP address. All right, so we're connected to the box. It says, "Hi Santa, we knew you were coming. Wanted to make it easy to drop off presents, so we created an account for you." So it's actually giving us a username and password. So we can actually let's test this. Well, it says we left you milk and cookies too. So we logged in. So the next question is what credential was left for you, and that's just looking for the password. There is a hint here that tells you enter just the password, so you know what it is. Excuse me. You know exactly what it is that it's looking for. So now that we've got the telnet, we've logged in, we're looking at enumeration. So we want to slide right down the chimney, log in, look around, enumerate, and it gives us some commands here we can run. We can look at cat etc star release, uname-a, cat etc issue. So what we're doing, we're trying to figure out what is running on this system. So we can see here when we look at the etc asterisk release that this is Ubuntu 12.04, which is the next question. Let's run those other commands just to see what they say. So it looks like we're running Linux Christmas. So this has a custom compiled kernel that's been called Christmas. And then if we look at the etc issue, whoops. I was expecting tab complete to work there, but it doesn't. Okay. And this is just the message that we got when we first logged in. All right. So it tells us here that this is a very old version of Linux. So if you're not familiar with Ubuntu, the version number actually tells us when this was released. So 1204 was the April 2012 version of Ubuntu that was released. So because this is an old version, it may be vulnerable to some kernel exploits, so we can use to escalate our privileges. Before we do that, let's take a look at the cookies and milk. Or actually, before we even do that, let's try something else. Instead of telnet, let's see what happens when we SSH. So here is the host. Now I'm actually going to type this out because I need to specify a user. So we're going to log in as Santa. So we know SSH is open. We know there's an account. We're going to try that same login, see if it also works for SSH. All right. And let's go ahead and launch bash just so tab complete and all that stuff works. So in this directory, we've got a christmas.sh and a cookies and milk. Let's see, christmas.sh is executable, so we can just run that, see what that does. Gives us a nice little sparkling Christmas tree, this Advent of Cyber with John Hammond. And then the next question is we want to look at cookies and milk. So cookies and milk, we can see there's a message here. It says, haha, Too bad, Santa. I, the Grinch, got here before you did. I helped myself to some of the goodies here, but you can still enjoy some half-eaten cookies and this leftover milk. Why don't you try and refill it yourself? Yours truly, the Grinch. So who got here first? It's looking for just his name in lowercase. So it is Grinch. Now, if we look at this file, besides the message, this looks like some C code. We got the same message up here. So yeah, this is, and it tells us that this is a portion of a kernel exploit called Dirty Cow. Gives us a CVE. It is a privilege escalation vulnerability in the kernel. So this takes advantage of a race condition found in the Linux kernel. The way it handles the memory subsystem handles copy on write. So that's where the cow comes from in the Dirty Cow. There's a link here where we can learn more about it. Now, this cookies and milk.txt file looks like a modified rendition of the Dirty Cow exploit written in C. So the next step is to find a copy of the original file online, get it on the target box. All right, so how are we going to do that? Let's take a look at this Dirty Cow. We can view the exploit here. And we can see there are a number of POCs for this that all make use of that same exploit, but they kind of all do it a little different way. So how do we find which one was left on the cookies and milk text file? And there's a couple ways we can do this. We could always just download all these and compare them, do a diff, something like that. Or one way is if we can look for some bit of code in here. Let's just try this, and we can Google it. This is how I would normally do it. I do this often. So in my day job, I'm always running into or frequently run into different exploits, and okay, the keyboard's being a bit of a pain. Let's go to Google. There we go. Let's search for that. Okay. So yeah, as I was saying, in my day job, I often do a lot of threat hunting. We found a lot of different exploit scripts, or some Python and Perl scripts. Found a number of Perl bots that are used to connect to different botnets on IRC. And most of the time, if you find a bit of unique code in those, and you Google that line of the code, you can kind of find the original source for whatever that script is. A lot of the Perl bots I see out there are just reused over and over by different bad guys. They get a hold of the same script, just modify a couple of variables, and they reuse it. So that's one way we're able to find that. So yeah, we search for this, and we get to this Dirty Cow dirty.c. So this is most likely what it is that we're looking for. We can compare this to the original code. It looks pretty similar. Looks like that's probably what we're looking for. So the next step, we need to get this file and then save it on the server. Yeah, just copy it over to the server. Okay. So there's a couple ways we can do that. We could download it and then upload it with a file transfer. Gives us some possibilities here, like using Netcat or Python HTTP server, or since we can SSH, we can also just SCP that. But since we already have a shell in here, we can just paste it in. So let's see, this is dirty.c, which, by the way, on the website we were looking at before, it's the bottom link is the same thing. So this takes us to the same link that we found when we were Googling. All right, so I'm going to open this in VI because I'm old school like that. And let's just copy this whole thing. All right. And then let's go to insert mode. Oh, already in insert mode. And paste. All right, let me make sure I didn't screw that up at the beginning. Nope. All right, so we have our dirty.c on here. And now we need to compile it. So this is a C source code, so it is something that needs to be compiled. And it actually tells us here exactly how to compile it. So we do need to specify a couple libraries and a couple of options when we compile it. And that's actually the next question. So what is the verbatim syntax you can use to compile, taken from the real C source code comments? So this is it. Copy that string, put it in there, and that is that question. Now we want to run the command, run the commands to compile the exploit, and then run the command itself. So let's do that. Let's see, did I copy that? I did. There we go. So we're going to compile it. Just copy and paste the command that was in the comments. That compiled right away. It's very easy. And then we just need to run /dirty. So this is going to create a new username, and it wants us to enter a password. So I'm going to enter a password here. And then we're going to wait a minute while this is attempting to exploit the server. So this is a memory exploit. It has to do with the copy on write. Let's see, there's kind of an explanation here on what this is. So like I said, there was a race condition in the Linux kernel's memory subsystem handled the copy on write breakage of private read-only memory mappings. So essentially an unprivileged local user could use this flaw to gain write access to otherwise read-only memory mappings and thus increase their privileges on the system. Let's see, this was an exploit that was found in the wild. This is a pretty old exploit, so it has been patched. All right, so let's close some of these tabs out here. And I'm just going to give this a minute to run. All right, here we go. So what did this exploit do? Well, it tells us that we can log in with the username firefart and then the password, because that's the password that I entered. So what new username was created with the default operations of the real C source code, and the answer to that is firefart. So it's created a new user called firefart. So now we can SU and become that user. So SU is the switch user command in Linux. And it will allow you to switch your current login to another user, assuming you have the appropriate permissions and passwords. All right, so there's asking for the password. We will enter password, and now we can see that I am firefart. Okay, so now I'm a different user on the system. Well, what does that do for me? Well, if I type ID, I can see that firefart is UID 0 and GID 0, so it's actually root. If we take a look at Etsy password, yeah, we can see that the root user has been sort of commented out, and this firefart user, it's got the password in it. So what I was able to do, and if you go back and look at the output, it says it copied the password, the Etsy password to Etsy password.back. And yeah, so it's made the user ID 0, which is always going to be root. So essentially changed the username for the root user. And if you were actually to use this exploit in a pen test, for example, don't forget to change Etsy password back, because you might run into some weird issues on a Linux box if root is not known as root. So keep that in mind. All right, so we should have root level access. If I just type CD to go to my home directory, we can see my home directory is actually /root. All right, so looks like the perpetrator left a message, follows instructions to prove he really did leave coal for Christmas. So we can see we've got Christmas.sh and message from the Grinch. Let's see if this is the same Christmas.sh. Looks like it is. We got our beautiful little ASCII Christmas tree here. kind of like the way that works. I want to take a look at that code. All right, so there's just a for loop and it echoes. Nice in the while loop. All right. Anyway, that's something I just want to play with later. And so we've got this message from the Grinch. Nice work, Santa. Wow, this house sure was dirty. Because we were using the dirty cow exploit. Nice pun there, Grinch. I think they deserve coal for Christmas, don't you? So let's leave some coal under the Christmas tree. Let's work together on this. Leave this text file here and leave the Christmas.h script here too, but create a file named coal in this directory. Then inside this directory, pipe the output of the tree command into the MD5 sum command. And the output of that command, the hash itself, is the flag you can submit to complete this task for the advent of cyber. Yours, John Hammond. Sorry, I mean the Grinch. The Grinch, seriously. So we need to leave some coal. So we need to create a file named coal, and we can just use that. Use the touch command as a quick way of doing that. So touch coal, and now we can see we've got Christmas.sh coal and message from the Grinch. So what is the tree command? It just gives you a tree-like structure of the directory that you're currently in. So we want to do tree, pipe that to MD5 sum, and we get an MD5 hash, and that is the final answer for this challenge. So this was a fun little challenge, just using some old exploits. But a nice little nice thing here. So let's terminate this box, and now we're going to do some stuff that doesn't actually require us to deploy something. Up onto day 14. Day 14 is talking about OSINT. So how are your OSINT skills? We want to follow Rudolph's tracks. Okay, 'twas the night before Christmas and Rudolph is lost. Now Santa must find him no matter the cost. You have been hired to bring Rudolph back. How are your OSINT skills? Follow Rudolph's tracks. So while hunting and searching for any hints or clues, Santa uncovers some details and shares the news. Rudolph loved to use Reddit and browsed aplenty. His username was iGuideTheClaws2020. So there's a discussion here on OSINT investigations. There's some learning objectives here, additional resources. There's a lot of great links here for doing some OSINT investigations. And let's jump down to the challenge. All right, so what URL will take me directly to Rudolph's Reddit comment history. So that's pretty straightforward. I've already got this pulled up here. But if on Reddit, if you go to /user and then the username and comments, and that will give you to this user's comments. So I like these challenges where they're actually using, real social network sites for some of the challenges. So this is a fun one. And in case you missed it, the username was given way up here in this little poem. So iGuideTheClaws2020. All right, so that URL, that's the answer to that one. According to Rudolph, where was he born? So let's look at his comments. Fun fact, I was actually born in Chicago. Go back. And my creator's name was Robert. All right. And that takes us to our next question, which is Rudolph mentions Robert. Can you use Google to tell me Robert's last name? So let's Google that. I've already Googled that, so we can see that in my history here. Just dropped a bunch of ash on myself. All right, so we see that the creator of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer was Robert L. May. So that would be the answer to that question. On what other social media platform might Rudolph have an account? And we can see that here also in his history. Yes, some days I love Twitter. Some days it's just lol. So that gives us the next one. What other social media platform is Rudolph on? He might be on Twitter. So now how are we going to find Rudolph on Twitter? So he doesn't have the exact same username on Twitter, but what we can do, we can copy the username he does have, go to Twitter and search for him. here we go. So we've got just... Let's see, is this the right one? I Guide the Clause 2020. All right, I think somebody's... There it is. Nope. All right, so it looks like somebody has registered I Guide the Clause 2020. So that username is somebody's having a little bit of fun with the people who are still going through this challenge. That happens sometimes. These especially when you're using social media sites. It's dynamic, so things can change. But yeah, so here's the account we're looking for. So I Guide Clause 2020 is the username that we're actually looking for here, and we can see this is Rudolph's account. All right, so now let's see what appears to be Rudolph's favorite TV show. So we've got his Twitter and we've got Reddit. Does he mention any TV shows on Reddit? Doesn't look like it. Let's look at his tweets. All right, so he's talking about the Marriott. We've got a high-res photo here. Here we go. Love me some Bachelorette. So that is what Rudolph's favorite TV show. All right, based on his post history, he took part in a parade. Where did the parade take place? Now we can see he's got some photos. So there's some photos over here. A couple things we could do with this. We could take these photos and do some image searches on them. We've also got a high-res photo. This is actually how I ended up doing this. If we download that high-res photo, and then we can look at the EXIF data. So there's also a discussion on that up here a little bit. Talks about utilizing image EXIF data to uncover critical details such as the exact photo location, etc. And to save some time, I already did that somewhere. There it is. All right, so I took that image. I went to this site. So this is exif.regex.info. Uploaded the image that I had downloaded, and we have some data here. So we've got latitude and longitude, so we can take those straight to Google Maps. Just throw in those coordinates, and let's see, where are we? Zoom out a little bit. Looks like we are in Chicago. So Chicago, once again, is the answer. So that's where he was born, and that's where the parade took place. Okay, we found the city, but where specifically? And there's those coordinates that we already extracted from the EXIF data. Did you find a flag too? Well, let's go back and look at that EXIF data, and we can see that the copyright actually is flag. Always checks the EXIF D4T4. And so, yes, that is the answer to that one. Next question. Has Rudolph been pwned? What password of his appeared in a breach? And this is one where I think the challenge is kind of broken down a little bit. They recommended you go to this site, and the site appears to be down. I was doing this last night, and it was down for me, but it came up for a few minutes. I was able to do the search and did get the password. The password was SpyGame. If you take a look at the video up here by the Cyber Mentor, the site was working when he went through the walkthrough, so you can actually see it there as well. And the link is in here somewhere. Yeah, this Scylla.sh will provide the password. Easy to search data. So you can search on Have I Been Pwned. It will show you that the account was breached, but it doesn't give you the password. There are some paid sites. So there's this dhash.com. They offer some other information, but it is a paid site. This one is free, but appears to be down right now. So sorry about that. I can't control somebody else's website, but that would be a good resource to search through and find, passwords that have been compromised. All right, so based on the information, it's likely Rudolph is in the Windy City, is staying at a hotel on the Magnificent Mile. What are the street numbers of the hotel? All right, so he mentioned that he was at the Marriott. Um, let's stay in this region because he was also in the Twitter. Let's see. Marriott is where Rudolph loves to lay his head. And he talking about the parade, he says right outside of my hotel too. So we can assume that the parade is right outside his hotel. We have these coordinates from the image. Let's just search for a Marriott in this region. Let's see. Let's zoom out a little bit. Search this area. There we go. The Chicago Marriott Downtown Magnificent Mile. Let's find the address for that. And it is on 540 North Michigan Avenue in Chicago. So the final answer, what are the street numbers of the hotel address? And it is 540. All right, so that does it for day 14. Let me close this one out, and we'll move on to day 15. So day 15 is an introduction into Python. So what is Python? How do you install Python? There's your first hello world, how the variables work, that sort of thing, operators, Boolean. Yeah, just sort of a quick overview of using Python. And then let's get down to the questions. Okay, so what is the output of true plus true? Let's go ahead and open a Python command line. And we can just type in what they said. So true plus true equals 2. So why is that? Well, true is true. But true is also equal to 1. So true is the word true is equal to the Boolean integer, or the number 1. True is 1, false is 0, but 1 plus 1 equals 2. Essentially, is that how that plays out? All right, what's the database for installing other people's libraries? That is discussed up here. We talk about libraries and we talk about PyPy. So PyPI is a database of libraries. So basically, it tells you exactly what. It's pretty much word for word what the question's asking for. So the answer is PyPy. What is the output of bool false? So you might think that this would be false, but it actually returns true. So why is that? So bool, it's testing the value inside the parentheses to see if it is true or false. The reason why it's returning true is because of these quotation marks. So this is actually making it a string. If you pass a string to the bool argument, it's just going to return true. Because it would essentially just be testing whether or not the value exists. But if you take out the quotation marks, then it's actually passing the Boolean argument false, and then it tests is false true, and the answer is false. So that's why the output of bool with the quotation marks false is true. So we could test that. We could make the we could make this anything. Any string in here is always going to return true. All right, what library lets us download HTML of a web page? I use Python all the time, so I already knew this one. It's requests, but that's also mentioned earlier in the article. What's the output of the program provided in code to analyze for question 5 in today's material? So this is here, code to analyze for question 5. So what are we doing? We're doing x equals, and we're making a list, and the list includes 1, 2, 3. Then we're saying y equals x. Then we're doing y dot append, and we're adding the number 6, and then we're going to print x. So easiest way to do this is just to run the code. So let's do x equals, and we're making a list. That's what the square brackets does. 1, 2, 3. So I can just type x here, and we can see what x represents. So x now equals y. Sorry, wrong way. y equals x. So we're setting a essentially a reference where y equals x and then x equals this list. But because y is a reference to x, what we'll find is we do y.append. So this is adding. Let's just take a look at y real quick. So we can see y is the same value. Now if we do y.append 6, what we're doing is we are adding 6 to the list. So the dot append for any list just adds that value to the end of the list. And then the last thing we want to do is print x. So we've modified y, but what happens to x? Well, x also got modified. So the output of the code is just a list 1, 2, 3, 6. And what causes the task to output that? This is also mentioned earlier in the discussion up on the page. This is what they call a pass by reference. So y is actually a reference to x. Y isn't a list itself. It is a reference to the list known as x. So when we modify y, we're also modifying x. All right, so that does it for our Python primer here on day, whatever this was 15? Yes, day 15. And then we're going to use that a bit doing some scripting on day 16. Now we do have a box here, so let's go ahead and deploy that. Oh no, Santa has taken off, leaving you, the faithful elves, behind. Can you help find Santa's location? Luckily, the elves are OSINT masters and remember a thing or two. Specifically, they remember that Santa has a web page at a site that will show up here in a second once the machine finishes deploying to help lost elves find their way home. Unfortunately, it looks like Santa never told the elves what port number the web server is on. So the first thing we gotta do is find the port. The web page has a link somewhere on it hidden away, so even if it isn't an elf can't find it. So we've got to find the web page, and then Santa Sled has an API we can talk to. The key for the API is between 0 and 100. It's an odd number, but be careful. After an unknown number of attempts, Santa Sled will ban your IP address. So we need to be careful and be specific on how we're doing this. Or we're going to get banned. All right, so we're going to deploy the machine, and we're going to find the web page, and then we're going to exploit it. So let's see how our deploying is going. There we go. We've got an IP address now. All right, so first thing we want to do, it tells us that we've got a page, but we don't have the port number. So we're going to do an Nmap first to see what port is open. All right, let's let that scan, and there we go. So we see it's on port 8000. Let's go ahead and pull this site up. So 10.10.201.225, port 8000, and it's at static index/index.html. All right, so here is Santa's tracking system. Let's see if we just go straight here. All right, so that's ugly. Let's go back. All right, so we found this. It's port 8000. That's the first question. Without using enumeration tools such as Dirbuster, what is the directory of the API without the API key? Now, if we look at the source code of this site, which I did with Control U, I'm just going to search for API. All right, so that was a real quick way. Yeah, so we can see here that in the source of the page, there is a reference. So most of these references don't really go anywhere, or most of these links, but there is a link here to machine IP/API/API key. So that gives us the format of the URL that we need, and it tells us that the API is at /API. So where is Santa right now? So we know that the link or the URL that we're going to want is going to be this IP port 10,000 It's going to be /API and then /API key, which we know from up here that the API key is a number between 0 and 100, and it's an odd number. All right, so let's write some Python to find that. Let's go to all right, let me get that URL. And could write a script, but I like using the interactive terminal just so I can actively modify things. If I make a mistake, I don't have to go back and open an editor and all that. So we're going to do some HTTP requests. So we're going to import the request library. So we know it's a number between 0 and 100. So what do we need to do? All right, give me a second. Let me remember how this works. So we need to create a list. All right, I think this will work. So let's say for I in range 0, 100, and I think that will work. Let's try this. Okay, so that gave us all of the even numbers. Let's try this way. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, well, let's try something else. Okay, so for I in range 0 to 100, print I. All right, that's going to give us all the numbers between 0 and 100. But we only want the odd numbers. So I'm going to make a list called odd numbers. So that's, I'm creating a list here. And then we're just going to say if I mod 2 and does not equal 0. Nope, that's the wrong thing. Let's see. If I mod 2 does not equal 0, print I. There we go. So that gave us all the odd numbers. So instead of print I, what we want to do is, let's see, what was that value? Odd numbers dot append. So remember dot append adds something to a list. So let's see if that gives us our list. Let's take a look at odd numbers. There we go. So we have a list of all the odd numbers that we can work with now. All right, now we have a list of API keys. We've got our base URL. See if that's still in my clipboard. There we go. It is. All right, so we should be able to make a request that is just this / and then the number. So what we'll do is for number in odd numbers. So we're going to do another for loop. URL equals, and let's do base URL plus, I guess I don't need a format string on this, just yeah. And string number. So we got to convert that to a string because base URL is a string and number is an integer. So we've got to convert that to a string. All right, so let's just see what this does. There we go. So that gives us a list of all the different URLs to try. That's one of the reasons why I like using the interactive command line interpreter here is you can, just do things in a sort of a step by step and test things as you go until you get something that works, and you can actually, write a script if you need to do something repeatedly. So we've got our URL. So now what we want to do, we're going to use the request library, and we are going to get the URL. And let's see, I want to go ahead and just have it display. Let's see, let's say we're trying URL. URL, there we go. All right, so it's going to tell us which URL that we're going to try. And then we are going to print out our .text. Yeah, that should work. So so this F here, this is a formatted string. What we're doing, this allows us to use curly braces to replace, put some Python code inside of a string. In this case, we're just calling this variable that we had defined up here earlier, which was all this that we had printed earlier. So it's each URL. So we're going to print the URL so we know which URL we're testing. But before that, we're actually going to do the get request, and then we're going to print the output of that. So that should give us everything that we need. Let's run that. All right, so we see here we get a bunch of error, key not valid, and we're looking for something that looks different than the rest. And here we go. Here's one thing that stands out when we do this URL. So this IP API/57. So that is the API key that we're testing. Then we get Winter Wonderland, Hyde Park, London. So where is Santa right now? Winter Wonderland, Hyde Park, London. The correct API key is 57. And yeah, and that was it. So just some real quick Python. Lets us enumerate all the different options and try them again. It looks like Santa's blocking is pretty loose. It's pretty permissive because it let me go through all 50 options, 1 through 99. Now let's see what happens if I run this again. So I'm going to run the exact same thing again, and this time we see Santa protection mechanism activated. Now if we go all the way up, we can see it happen all the way at number 1. So apparently it lets us go through 50, so we can try all numbers 1 through 99 one time before we reach Santa's protection. If you get blocked, you'll have to terminate and redeploy the target instance because your IP will be blocked. But so if you're trying through it and you screw something up, you're gonna have to terminate and redeploy. But it will let you go through all the numbers at least once, or just exactly once, before Santa's protection kicks in. So that does it for days 13 through 16. They're pretty straightforward, pretty simple stuff. So some nice introduction to Python. Python's a great language. It's really popular in the hacking community because it's just really easy to work with. There's a lot of great libraries out there that already do a lot of stuff for you. So that's it for today. That will do it for this version of, or advent of, Cyber 2. Tune in tomorrow again at 10 a.m. I'm going to go through the next 4 days. So that will be, let's see, what did I just do? I just did day 16. So we're going to do days 17, 18, 19, and 20. And then on Christmas Eve, I will do the 21st through the 24th again at 10 a.m. Because that's when I come out here and have a cigar. So that does it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Check me out tomorrow. If you want to see what content I've created, you can check out my website, bamctf.com. That's bamctf.com, or check me out on Twitter at bamctf for future updates. Do have a CTF coming up in January the 14th. I'm going to get that registration site up soon. When I have that up, I'll let you know. It'll also be on my Twitter That's at BAMCTF, and on my website, bamctf.com. There'll be links to all that once that's up and running. And I think that will do it for today. So thanks for watching, and don't forget, next time you get stuck on a CTF, to try harder, don't panic, and always RTFM. Thanks for watching.